In the ever-evolving landscape of love and relationships, navigating the complexities of past experiences while seeking new connections can be both exhilarating and daunting. As I reflect on my journey since my split with Heather, I've come to realize just how much my perspective has shifted. While I once felt deeply intertwined in her life, I now find myself completely out of touch and, quite frankly, indifferent to it. This transformation has opened the door to new possibilities, and my personality profile has started attracting attention from various individuals. Among them is Kiko, a fascinating single mother from Japan who has piqued my interest in ways I didn't expect. Our conversations have sparked a flicker of hope, prompting me to wonder if this new chapter might hold the promise of love and companionship once more. Yet, with the lessons learned from my past, I remain cautious, determined to protect my heart and interests as I explore this exciting journey ahead. The most heartbreaking aspect of deep affection and love is the way it can blind a person to the obvious signs indicating that a marriage is doomed to fail. I had fallen head over heels for a woman who, in hindsight, took full advantage of my feelings for her. I was naive and foolish, completely unaware of how she was manipulating me. However, life has a way of setting things right, and I eventually came to see the truth. As I filled out the questionnaire, I mentally noted the characteristics I was looking for: shoulder-length dark brown or black hair, a medium build, dark eyes, and someone in their mid to late 30s, ideally between 5'4" and 5'8". A good sense of humor was essential, and intelligence was non-negotiable. I chuckled at my own little joke about the importance of fluency in a second language, preferably Spanish or Japanese, and a fondness for children. After reviewing my responses, I made a few tweaks before hitting send. Along with the questionnaire, I included a brief paragraph about myself, deliberately omitting any names and explaining my reasons for seeking companionship. I wasn't looking for a supermodel. I wanted a genuine woman who could embrace my lifestyle, which included my 2 children. I treasured the feeling of love and longed for the comfort of marriage, just not with my current spouse. It's a perplexing situation, but if you were married to Heather, you would understand. We had been married for 8 years, and it was becoming clear that our relationship was nearing its end. In hindsight, marrying her was probably a mistake. We had been having the same arguments since before we exchanged vows, and I had clung to the hope that she would mature and change, but alas, she never did. Despite the challenges of raising 2 kids and enduring countless disputes, she remained steadfast in her beliefs, insisting that this was simply who she was. But this time, things had escalated beyond what I could tolerate. Heather had crossed a line I never thought she would. I didn't rush into marriage right after high school or college. I wanted to establish a solid foundation for my future. My 2 closest friends and I had poured 6 years into building our advertising company. While we weren't a giant in the industry, we had developed a loyal clientele and were steadily growing. I first met Heather at a friend's gathering 2 years after we launched our business. By then, we were slowly but surely making our mark. Heather had striking features, blonde, tall, and undeniably attractive. While I considered myself decent-looking, I lacked the kind of charm that often captivates women. I saw myself as slightly above average, and if someone didn't appreciate me, I figured that was their loss. I reflected on my college days when, encouraged by friends, I approached the most beautiful girl in the room to ask her to dance. As a freshman, I was aware of the likelihood of rejection, but I took the dare anyway. She had already turned down several other suitors, standing confidently among her friends. "Care to dance?" I had asked, anticipating her disdainful look. "No, thank you," she replied, clearly unimpressed. "Thank goodness," I retorted, raising my voice just enough for onlookers to hear. "I was afraid you might say yes, and then I'd have to endure your company on the dance floor. My invitation was merely an act of courtesy. Someone as conceited and self-centered as you likely doesn't get many offers. Now, if you'll excuse me, nature calls," I declared, walking away and leaving her and her stunned friends behind. Laughter erupted around me. As you can tell, I've never been one to mince words. At least I wasn't before Heather came into my life. Looking back, I suppose I was blind to her true nature. Returning to the story, it was inexplicable when Heather agreed to go out with me after I asked her out. I couldn't quite understand why, but I felt a surge of happiness nonetheless. With my hectic schedule, we didn't have the chance to go out often. Her social calendar was usually packed. However, as the years progressed, things started to calm down a bit, and I began to consider dating again. With a little extra cash, I could finally treat a woman to more than just pizza and a movie. One day, I bumped into Heather at the mall. "Hey, Steve, how's it going? Still burning the midnight oil?" she teased. "Work's still keeping me busy," I replied, a smile creeping onto my face. "But we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. How about you?" "I'm still with that accounting firm. Next week marks 4 years," she said proudly. "Would you like to grab a bite sometime and catch up?" I asked, surprised at my own boldness. "Sure, that sounds great. Let me check my schedule and I'll give you a call," she replied, her smile widening. "Perfect. I'll be looking forward to it," she said, waving goodbye as she rushed off to a hair appointment. I won't get into the specifics of our subsequent outings or my awkward attempts to court Heather, but let's just say I put forth my best effort and achieved some level of success. For me, it was pure bliss. We had been casually seeing each other for about 6 months before deciding to commit exclusively. While we progressed physically, she made it clear she wouldn't take things further until she felt ready. As our exclusive relationship approached its 4th month, I decided to go all out for our next date. I took her to a fancy restaurant, followed by a romantic carriage ride around the lake, and capped off the evening at an upscale dance club. This wasn't a venue filled with rowdy youngsters. It catered to a more sophisticated crowd. Despite the bustling atmosphere, I struggled to flag down a waitress for drinks. "Why don't I head over to the bar and grab us some drinks? I'll be right back," I suggested, maneuvering through the crowd. After a good 10 minutes, I returned to our table, only to find Heather was nowhere in sight. As I settled into the restroom, waiting for Heather to return, my mind was racing. At 5'8", with a full head of blonde hair, she was hard to miss, especially when she was out on the dance floor. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept up on me when I spotted her. She was dancing with a tall guy, swaying effortlessly to a salsa beat. I stood up for a better view, trying to convince myself that it was just a casual dance. But as I watched them, a slow burn ignited in my stomach. She looked stunning, but the way he was holding her too closely sent waves of jealousy through me. As the salsa track ended and a slow song began, I anxiously awaited her return to our table. But instead of coming back, I watched them embrace, and I felt an intense mix of emotions. It had taken me 3 months to get this close to her, and here was this guy, seemingly all too happy to wrap his arms around her. If the music hadn't changed, I might have stepped in right then and there. Finally, she returned to our table, her face bright with a smile. "You're back," she exclaimed, reaching for her margarita. "It's pretty warm out there," she added, fanning herself with one hand while sipping her drink with the other. "I really needed that." Just as she set her glass down, another guy approached, asking her to dance. She was about to accept, and I couldn't take it anymore. "If you leave me again to dance with him, you'll be finding your own way home tonight," I said, my voice low but firm. "Steve, it's just a dance. Aren't we just on a date?" she shot back, but I could hear the hint of annoyance in her tone. "Sure, but you've said it yourself, you're not much of a dancer, yet you seem to enjoy it when it's with someone else," I replied, my frustration boiling over. She stood up, insisting it was only one dance and that she'd be back in 5 minutes. As she took a couple of steps away from the table, I slammed my drink down and got up. "You know what? I'm done," I said, turning to leave. Her voice calling my name trailed behind me, but I didn't stop. Outside, I handed my ticket to the valet, my heart racing. "Steve, what on earth are you doing?" she asked, catching up to me. "Leaving without a word," I said coldly. "I warned you back there. If you ditched me again, I'd walk out and you went off with that guy anyway." "It was just a dance. Why is it such a big deal?" she shot back, her frustration evident. "Because it's not a big deal to you, apparently," I replied, just as my car pulled up. "Steve, please wait. I'll grab my purse and coat," she pleaded. But I was already sliding into my car. "Why don't you stay and enjoy dancing with every Tom, Dick, and Harry?" I snapped, feeling the anger rise. "That way you won't have to worry about me being bored while you're on the dance floor. Don't bother calling me. I'll reach out when I want to. I drove away, leaving Heather standing there, frustration etched on her face. It felt like I was living a scene straight out of a movie like Paul Newman in Cool Hand. Luke, what we have here is a failure to communicate. That was exactly what was happening between Heather and me. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself dating other people. But I missed her more than I cared to admit. I couldn't let myself be taken for granted or disrespected like that again. If she'd asked me to dance with someone else, I might have been okay with it for a fast song or two, but never, under any circumstances, would I allow someone to dance that closely with her during a slow song. No way. A few weeks later, I was out with Sandy, having dinner at Tony's on what was our second date. Just as we were enjoying our meal, I heard a familiar voice behind me. I didn't even need to turn around to know who it was. "Evening, Heather," I said, keeping my eyes on my plate. By then, she had sidled up to our table with her date, looking radiant but far too confident. "How have you been?" she asked, a smirk on her lips. "Just fine, now that I'm not with an insecure man anymore," she replied, her eyes darting toward Sandy. "Glad to hear it, but sorry for my manners. Heather, this is Sandy. Sandy, meet Heather, a girl I used to date." "Steve, we were more than just seeing each other," Heather retorted, her voice dripping with disdain. "Right, until your looks and ego got the best of you," I shot back, sarcasm lacing my tone. "But that's all in the past now, isn't it? Want to introduce us to your current man? Or are you planning to trade up later?" "Get off me, Steve," she snapped, but I could see the fire in her eyes. "We never did get around to that, did we?" I replied, my grin broadening. "But I'm not exactly remorseful. You probably dated other guys since me, and I doubt anything can protect me from what you might have." With that, she turned away, her friend hurriedly following behind her. "What was that all about?" Sandy asked, clearly curious. "Just a little history," I replied, trying to downplay it. "Well, it looks like you two have some unresolved issues. I mean, it's obvious you're not over each other," Sandy said, her tone serious. The rest of the evening felt off. After dinner, we cuddled on her couch, but I couldn't shake the thoughts swirling in my mind. "Steve, when you're done with her, maybe we can give it another shot," Sandy said, her voice laced with uncertainty. "Or maybe not. I'm not used to being second best, and I don't like it." She was right. There was still something there with Heather, a connection I couldn't ignore. I muttered something about calling her, but we both knew it wasn't going to happen. I got one last kiss from Sandy, and then I was out of there, driving aimlessly through the night. The following week and a half proved to be a challenge. Our team was behind schedule on 2 projects, with 3 more in the pipeline. Ken, my partner, urged me to get my act together. "Steve, you need to focus." "I can't stop thinking about Heather," I admitted. "Listen, just give her a call, wine and dine her, and sort things out," Ken suggested. "We need you focused to finish the projects on time, so let's get back to work." Ken and Andy, my other partner, had it easy. Both had supportive fiancés who understood their round-the-clock dedication to work. But with Heather, it felt different. She thrived on being the center of attention and complained if she wasn't. Yet Sandy was right. I still had feelings for Heather. I decided to send her an email instead of calling, asking if she was free on Saturday and expressing my desire to talk. When she responded asking if dinner was included, I knew she'd be there. Relief washed over me, and I felt the same relief from Ken and Andy once I completed my project and helped them with theirs. As partners, we had tightly structured bylaws for our corporation. None of us could sell our shares without the other's approval, and majority ruled on all decisions. Each of us had our own strengths. Ken excelled in sales, Andy in graphic design, and I handled slogans and overall project management to ensure profitability. Together, we made a formidable team. When Saturday came and we placed our order, Heather looked across the table, her expression shifting. "Steve, what are we even doing here?" "Just 2 old friends enjoying a nice dinner together," I replied, trying to keep things light. But deep down, I knew it was much more than that. "Is that all? What about the email? Were you too scared to call me? Worried I'd reject you and bruise your fragile ego?" I stood up, feeling a mix of frustration and disappointment. "I suppose you're right. It was foolish of me to expect you'd changed." I placed my napkin back on the table, preparing to leave. "Wait! You're always so self-centered, never considering anyone but yourself," she shot back, her eyes narrowing. Sit down. It was just a dumb joke. Can't a girl crack a joke to lighten the mood? If it was a joke, it certainly wasn't funny, I replied, feeling the tension rising. But before we dive into anything, there are some things I need to say. Can we at least wait until after dinner for your terms and conditions? I'm starving, and I don't want to miss this meal if things get heated. She smiled, a look that could thaw even the iciest heart. Let's have some drinks, enjoy a peaceful dinner, and then we can hash things out later. Fine, a truce until dessert, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Who said I was giving you dessert? She teased, taking a sip of her wine. You might get a kiss, but dessert isn't guaranteed. It turned out that the physical brawl I had anticipated wasn't what she had in mind at all. Instead, her idea of dessert was far more delightful than I could have imagined. Now, wasn't that better than shouting and arguing? She asked as we lay there, breathless and entangled in each other. If I remember correctly, I heard some yelling a little while ago. That was only when you stopped what you were doing, I replied, smirking. I was almost there. I'd call that a passionate exchange of words, and you didn't seem to mind much when I did it. All right, you can engage in verbal sparring like that anytime you want, as long as we conclude things the way we just did. She rolled over on top of me, showering me with affection. Now about those terms and conditions, I said with a grin. Over that weekend, we managed to resolve most of our disagreements. We established boundaries and even came up with a safe word to use if either of us crossed the line. Heather would occasionally reach out to me with a single word, chocolate. Whether through a call or an email, we both understood its significance. I have to head out, guys. I'll see you in the morning, I called out to my colleagues as I stood up. Steve, where are you off to? Ken asked. If we collaborate, we can have the Carter layout finished by 9. Honestly, I'd rather spend time with Heather than eat cold pizza with you any day, I replied, slipping on my coat. Plus, she has a much better physique than you, and I hope to have some intimate time before I'm too worn out. 2 months later, Heather moved in with me. I worked relentlessly, convinced that my efforts were paving the way for a secure future for both of us. I believed that the payoff would be worth it in the end. However, when I revealed my intention to propose to Heather, to Andy, and Ken, their reactions were intense. I've got nothing against Heather, and I know you're head over heels for her, Andy said cautiously. But have you considered the worst-case scenario? I shot him a stern glance. What do you mean? Steve, just hear me out. If things go south after marriage, she could legally claim half of your assets, everything we've worked so hard to build. We can't afford for someone to swoop in and stir up trouble. All I'm suggesting is that you consult our lawyer and get his perspective. If you're comfortable with his advice, then go ahead with our full support. You guys really need to unwind. You're burning yourselves out, Ken added, trying to lighten the mood. Speaking of which, what about Linda and Andy? Have you discussed a prenuptial agreement with them? They assured me their fiancés were on board, and if I doubted them, I could verify it. But guys, it just feels so cold and impersonal. I can already anticipate arguments, I argued. Isn't it better to address everything up front before popping the question? Andy countered. If you delay it, she might think you're uncertain. Get her agreement now, then propose. That way you're protected, and it's a non-issue moving forward. You'll rest easier knowing you're covered. But he was wrong. I found it harder to sleep, especially with Heather's warm presence beside me. I'll admit it, I was weak when it came to her. With every other girl I had dated, I had been in control. But with Heather, I was a puddle of mush. A week later, after a hearty dinner and a cozy night together, I broached the topic carefully. Darling, can I talk to you about something? I began. Of course, honey. Anything, she replied, snuggling closer. Do you have faith in me? I mean, do you believe I would ever intentionally harm you? I certainly hope not. Why do you ask? You haven't done something reckless, have you? She said, sitting up to look at me intently. No, I haven't done anything like that. I've just been reflecting on our relationship and our future, that's all, I assured her. Sweetheart, I think about us every day and how content I am. You know I've dedicated myself to building my business. I see it as our safety net for the future. You work too hard and your colleagues don't seem to fully recognize your efforts, she replied, making what I needed to discuss even more challenging. We each bring our own expertise and collaborate to achieve our goals. That's always been our approach. However, when we established the company, we implemented certain bylaws that prevent anyone else from acquiring shares, I continued, my heart racing. This ensures that only the 3 of us will ever own the company. What if one of you decides to leave or if one of you passes away? She asked, concern creeping into her voice. In that case, the remaining two will buy out the third person's share, and it will stay with the original owners, I explained, trying to keep my composure. Steve, how does this relate to us? She asked, sensing the tension. The prenup proposal, a turning point in their relationship. You're proposing to marry me, but you want me to waive all my rights to everything? So when you're done with me, you can just toss me aside like I'm nothing? Heather's voice was charged with disbelief, her face flushed even in the dim light of the bedroom. As I counted silently to 5, preparing to respond, she erupted with anger. You despicable piece of trash, who do you think you are? Listen, honey, let me clarify, I began, but my words were drowned out by a loud crash. The last thing I saw was her storming through the broken door, leaving me in stunned silence. What followed was 3 long days filled with uncertainty and regret. I tried to reach out to her at work, but she ignored my calls. I shared the situation with my colleagues. Thanks, guys, I said, my frustration palpable. Heather left me because I dared to bring up that ridiculous prenuptial agreement. Now she won't even talk to me. Is there anything else you want me to tell her? I'm sure you can think of a few things to further infuriate her. Steve, I'm sorry, but how would you feel if she left you and you lost half of everything you've worked so hard for? One of my friends replied, and I had to admit they had a point. Yet it didn't make it any easier to swallow. That evening, when I returned home, I found Heather waiting for me. Do I look like someone who's solely driven by money? Do you think I'm with you only for your wealth? Her voice was sharp, filled with accusation. I apologized for the other night, and no, I don't think that. I attempted to explain, but she cut me off again. So, you're essentially asking for everything while leaving me with nothing? You want to go out and have fun and then abandon me whenever you feel like it? Heather, I would never betray your trust, I replied, desperation creeping into my tone. Oh, I see now. You suspect that it's me who would betray you. That's what this is all about, isn't it? Well, I'm glad I discovered your true feelings before it was too late. With that, she turned her back to me, and I could feel the anger boiling inside. Okay, Miss High and Mighty, what specific terms do you want to include in this agreement? I challenged her. I want to protect my business interests and everything I've built. If you have any concerns, now is the time to voice them. She paused, turning to face me. What if you betray me? What if 10 years down the road you decide you want someone younger or hotter? How would that play out? We can add clauses to address those concerns, I suggested, trying to remain calm. If you fear I might stray, we can set clear repercussions if either of us crosses that line. Heather frowned, her mind visibly racing through the implications. I dislike this idea as much as you do, but I see the logic behind it. It feels like we're drafting a contract for a marriage, detached and conditional. Well, at least there's a silver lining in all this, she said, suddenly winking at me. Now I know you're serious about marrying me. Her frown transformed into a smile, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I trust you wouldn't betray me, at least not outside the bedroom, she teased. If signing some ridiculous prenup is what it takes to secure your commitment, then let's just get it done and move on. I don't want to keep dwelling on it. I won't have second thoughts, I asserted firmly, hoping to reassure her. Sure, she scoffed, taking my hand and leading me back to our bedroom. We need to put the last 3 days behind us, and I know just the way to start the healing process. The next day, I was late to work as we finalized the prenup. It took a couple of weeks to hammer out the details, but ultimately we agreed that my business and home would be off limits, while everything else was up for discussion. In the event of a split, assets would be divided 60-40 in my favor, reflecting my higher income. However, if either of us cheated, the guilty party would forfeit up to $25,000, while the remainder would go to the injured party. We carefully defined cheating to include not only physical infidelity, but also emotional betrayal and public humiliation. I even included potential impacts on my business. The final document was comprehensive and meticulously detailed. We both signed it, and after notarizing a copy, we placed another in our bank's safety deposit box, hopefully to be forgotten. That evening, we went out to dinner to celebrate. The relief was palpable, and it felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted. As I sat there, gazing at Heather, I couldn't help but reflect on how much I cherished her and how narrowly I had escaped losing her. "Are you happy?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Absolutely," she replied, reaching for my hands. "You know I love you, right?" "And you know I'm head over heels for you too, don't you?" I responded, our gazes locking in mutual affection. "Shall we skip dinner and head home?" I suggested, my heart racing at the thought. "No way, cowboy. I'm famished and craving a juicy steak tonight," she replied, eyeing me mischievously. "What if I proposed to you right now?" "You already did, remember?" I thought, realizing that our discussion about the prenup had been our unspoken commitment. But I had been carrying that ring with me for a month, waiting for the perfect moment to present it to her. "All right, Steve, let's hear those words," she insisted, putting down her wine glass and crossing her arms, a playful smile on her face. "Here? Now? In a bustling restaurant?" I teased back, feeling the weight of the moment. This time, though, I was ready to make my move. "Well, I'm getting to that," I whispered, feeling sweat trickle down my neck. "Would you be against signing a prenuptial agreement?" I managed to ask hesitantly, bracing for her reaction. Rising from my seat, I made my way toward Heather, gently pulling her up from her chair. "Steve, you're making a scene," she whispered, glancing around nervously as curious eyes turned in our direction. Ignoring the stares, I dropped to one knee, my heart racing as I retrieved the ring from my vest pocket. "Heather, I love you more than anyone else in this world," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "You bring me immense joy, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" I declared loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. A hush fell over the room as all eyes focused on us. Heather stared at the ring, her expression a mix of disbelief and happiness. I could see her lips moving as she silently mouthed, "Yes, yes," before finally exclaiming, "You daring man, I'll marry you!" The room erupted into cheers, with patrons congratulating us, and in that moment, I felt like the happiest man alive. 4 months after our small but beautiful wedding, I discovered Heather was pregnant with our first child. Just 2 weeks later, after our son Gary Michael was born, Heather made the decision to leave her job and become a full-time homemaker. When our daughter Casey arrived, our family felt complete. 1 son, 1 daughter, and a charming home surrounded by a white picket fence. We had everything we wanted, or so I thought. Every month we'd have dinner with my business partners and their spouses, all of whom had also tied the knot. Every quarter we hosted modest parties for our clients as a simple gesture to express gratitude for their continued support. In retrospect, I began noticing Heather's behavior shifting shortly after Casey was born. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but looking back, I realize I probably should have. When she entered a room, she craved attention. The way she dressed began to change, subtly at first, but gradually becoming bolder, especially before Casey was born. After Casey arrived, Heather poured her energy into dressing our daughter in the most colorful and stylish outfits she could find. To me, Casey was my little angel. To Heather, it was as if she were a doll in need of adornment. Our first major disagreement erupted during one of our quarterly gatherings, shortly after our 6th anniversary. While I was busy mingling with my partners, Heather was also on the floor, though for entirely different reasons. She wasn't drunk, maybe just a bit tipsy, but she was becoming overly friendly with some of the men present. While she had always enjoyed dancing and was quite skilled at it, her moves on the dance floor that night were undeniably suggestive. I wasn't the only one who noticed. One of my partner's wives leaned over and whispered, "Steve, do you think Heather is drunk?" "I don't think so," I replied, confused. "Why do you ask?" She simply turned me around and gestured toward the dance floor. The sight made my stomach churn. Heather was dancing with a guy I didn't recognize, and the only way to describe what she was doing was akin to dry humping her partner right there in front of everyone. When the song ended, I rushed over, grabbing her arm firmly. "What on earth are you doing?" I demanded, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Steve, I'm just dancing with the son of your oldest client. He invited me to dance, and I agreed." "What's the matter?" she replied, as if the situation were entirely innocent. "The problem is, I feel uncomfortable when my wife is dancing so intimately with another man in public," I shot back. "A lot of young people dance like that these days." "But it doesn't really matter to you," she snapped back. "It matters a lot to me. You are a married woman with 2 children now, Heather. Steve, just because we have kids doesn't mean I have to stop living, she replied, her voice dripping with defiance. I'm not forbidding you from having a good time. I just want you to understand how much fun this can be. Think about what our clients might think. They could terminate their contracts if they suspect any misconduct, I warned, my voice urgent. Okay, I'll keep my voice down, she said, attempting to lighten the mood. But you really need to relax. The drive home was long, and our disagreement continued, revolving around the expectations of a spouse of one of the proprietors. I voiced my concerns, but she merely shrugged it off, rolling her eyes. It was as if my worries were irrelevant, and from that moment on, things began to deteriorate. 2 months later, at a charity auction, Heather wore a skirt I deemed too short for the occasion. I expressed my disapproval, but Heather stood her ground. Steve, if you don't like how I'm dressed, just go without me, she retorted. You know I can't do that, I argued, but I conceded reluctantly, knowing I couldn't force her to change. That evening, she made a deliberate effort to mingle with the crowd, despite my attempts to keep her at arm's length. We danced to more than half the songs, and during a slow dance, it felt like she nestled into my embrace. Babe, why don't we leave and head home? I'm feeling incredibly aroused, especially after that last dance, she whispered suggestively in my ear. I'd love to, but let's hold off for now. We still need to stay for the auction. This is a business dinner, not a social gathering, I reasoned. Heather was fine until the auction began. We had successfully bid on a few items that would be useful for my work, and as we prepared to leave, the auctioneer announced a date with one of the attractive single guys. I briefly lost sight of Heather for less than 30 seconds, only to discover that she and another woman were vigorously bidding on that guy. What on earth are you doing? I hissed angrily through gritted teeth, attempting to maintain a smile. Have you completely lost your mind? Just raising the price, she responded nonchalantly, as if that explained everything. Now think about what you're doing. My married wife is bidding on a date with a single guy. Everyone in this room knows who we are, and it gives the impression that I struggled to find the right words, my mind racing. The situation felt utterly absurd, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was not the way a marriage should be. Either you're okay with it, or you couldn't care less about our marriage. Either way, you've thoroughly embarrassed me tonight. So grab your purse, smile politely at everyone, because we're leaving before you do any more damage to my reputation. Is that clear? I shot at Heather, my voice tight with restrained anger. You don't have to treat me or talk to me like a child, she replied, her tone laced with defiance. Darling, if I don't spell it out, your tiny mind can't grasp what I'm saying, I maintained, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace as we finally exited the building. The tension escalated in the car, the air thick with unresolved issues. Steve, I'm not stupid. I have an MBA and a degree in accounting, she retorted, her voice rising. Then maybe you should engage that brain of yours more often. You know what they say, if you don't use it, you lose it, I shot back, my frustration boiling over. Keep it up, and I know something you won't have access to for a very long time, she fired back, her words dripping with venom. Is that supposed to be a threat? I asked, incredulous. Not a threat, a promise. We were both furious, neither willing to budge or concede our points. It was clear that intimacy was off the table for that night, and likely the next as well. The tension didn't dissipate even when we reached the office the following morning. I heard your wife was thinking about buying a stallion, a colleague said, attempting to lighten the mood. Buying office supplies is one thing, but if she went for that, you'd have to pay the bills out of your pocket, he added with a chuckle. Seeing that I wasn't laughing, he quickly tried to backtrack. Steve, it was just a joke. It's not funny now, and it certainly wasn't funny last night, so let's just drop the subject, okay? Of course, no problem, he said, sensing the tension. Look, I've already had to deal with one woman who doesn't think before she says or does something stupid. I don't need to worry about you too. Let's just focus on the job, I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. It wasn't the best way to kick off a Monday morning, but thankfully I had a busy workload. I closed my office door, allowing myself to focus without interruptions. At home, though, the atmosphere was icy. If it weren't for our 2 kids, I would have spent even less time there. Despite sharing a bed, it felt like a massive barrier separated us. Touching felt like it would burn me, as though I'd been struck by a hot fireplace poker. Are you finished sulking? Heather asked one Friday evening after dinner. If not, I'm heading out. I've had enough of this frostbite since last Saturday. You still don't understand, do you? I replied, looking at her with frustration. I'm afraid you never will. I shook my head, feeling a heavy sadness settle over me as I turned to walk away. Please talk to me. Don't just walk away or I'll leave, she pleaded, a hint of desperation in her voice. Was she attempting to threaten me? Fine, do as you wish, I replied, my words cold. Perhaps I should have kept her on a tighter leash. Maybe then I could have exerted some control over her, but I knew that wouldn't have made a difference, especially with her. I'm leaving. Don't bother waiting, she shot back, her voice sharp. She stormed out, wearing a short black leather skirt that left little to the imagination and a white blouse slashed down to her navel. Where should I send your things after you leave? I called after her, the words spilling out before I could stop them. She shot me a glance over her shoulder but walked out without responding. I contemplated getting heavily intoxicated to forget the night's events, but I ultimately decided against it. My marriage was deteriorating rapidly, and it felt as if she no longer cared. Despite being a lousy wife, Heather was an excellent mother, and that was one of the few reasons I tolerated her indifferent behavior. She returned home shortly before 1 a.m., pretending to be asleep. I avoided talking to her that night, listening to the sounds of the shower, the hum of her electric toothbrush, and finally noticing when the light in the bathroom went out. When she slipped into bed, she settled on her usual side, but instead of silence, she started kissing the back of my head. I know you're not sleeping. Do you want to have some fun? She murmured seductively. I turned to face her, but my silence spoke volumes. It looks like you needed to go out and have fun with other guys anyway. I lost interest in you the moment you walked out the door tonight, I said flatly. Grabbing my pillow, I decided to sleep on the couch. I didn't sleep at all. I just lay there, replaying the events of the night in my mind. I was fed up with her flirting, her dancing, and the way she seemed to bask in the attention of any guy who paid her a little notice. I'd always been jealous, but it had only gotten worse over the years. She was my wife, and no one else's. When she married me, it meant that she belonged to me and I belonged to her. But now, I couldn't trust her anymore. I was scared to think about how she behaved when I wasn't around. Around 7 a.m., I glanced up and saw her standing there in her bathrobe, leaning against the door frame with her arms crossed. We need to have a conversation, she began, her voice serious. I want you to know that last night, I didn't do anything with anyone else. I had a few drinks, danced with a few guys, and then came back home. That's it. I didn't kiss anyone, let anyone touch me inappropriately, or go to bed with anyone. You have to believe me, she said, her tone pleading. Why should I trust you? I replied, my heart racing with hurt and anger. I've seen how you behave around our friends. I can only imagine what you're like around strangers. I just don't want to argue about it anymore. You can live your life, and I'll live mine. We'll intersect occasionally, and life will move forward this way. I won't have to worry about you embarrassing me again. You're giving up on us, on our marriage? She shouted, her voice rising in frustration. What marriage? For too long I felt more like your keeper than your husband. It's like a father trying to protect his daughter's innocence. He tries his best, but ultimately it's up to her to preserve it or give it away. You've given away our marriage. You're such an ass, Steve. I didn't give anything away. That's right. You didn't. But you made me pay with my self-respect and the love I once had for you, time and time again, but not anymore. I have nothing left to give. Come upstairs and I'll make you feel good like I used to, she coaxed, trying to bridge the growing chasm between us. You're still not understanding me, are you? I'm done. It's over, I said, the finality of my words hanging heavy in the air. She stormed off, muttering something under her breath as she left the room. I believed I could maintain a coexistence with her while living separately for the sake of our children, but in truth, I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. With tears welling in my eyes, I found myself apologizing to Kathy. The words were heavy, and even after all this time, it felt difficult to talk about my past. Taking a deep breath to steady my emotions, I began to share the painful journey I had traveled. Each word felt like a weight on my chest as I recounted the moments that had nearly cost me everything: my family, my marriage, my happiness. The terrifying thought of losing it all forced me to confront the deeper meaning of love and commitment. It wasn't merely about passion or fleeting desires. It was about a love that could endure through the toughest storms. The love Harry and I had built together was irreplaceable, and I felt an overwhelming gratitude for the fact that he was still in my life. Kathy listened intently, her brow furrowed in contemplation. She expressed her own fears about how she would cope if her husband ever left her. When she inquired if I had ever told Harry the truth, a knot twisted in my stomach. I explained how fear had paralyzed me, fear of losing him, fear of revealing what I had hidden. I had come perilously close to losing him once, and the idea of him discovering my secret was unbearable. Since that pivotal moment, I made a conscious effort to be the best wife I could be. I showered Harry with love and appreciation daily, determined to no longer take our marriage or him for granted. Yet even with my newfound commitment, I lived in constant dread of what would happen if the truth ever came to light. Kathy reached out, giving my hand a comforting squeeze. She thanked me for my honesty and admitted that my story had made her reconsider a decision she was on the verge of making. I felt a rush of relief wash over me, knowing that my vulnerability might have saved her from a regrettable choice. As we wrapped up our conversation, we made tentative plans to meet again soon. Walking home, I felt a sense of accomplishment, a small victory in knowing that I might have protected my friend from making a mistake she could later regret. Upon arriving home, I eagerly awaited my daughter Jennifer's return from school. I greeted her with a kiss and her favorite after-school snack, marveling at how quickly she was growing up. Soon she would be turning 10, and I couldn't help but think about how fast time was flying. Where had the years gone? Later that evening, when Harry walked through the door, I greeted him with warm hugs and kisses, my heart swelling with gratitude for the life we had built together. The conversation with Kathy earlier had been a poignant reminder of just how precious every moment was. That night, after Harry had drifted off to sleep beside me, I lay awake for a while, propping myself up on my elbow. I traced the lines on his face, each crease telling a story of the years we had shared. With every gentle stroke, my heart swelled with love and admiration for this man who had stood by me through it all. Leaning in, I pressed a soft kiss to his lips, and to my delight, he smiled back at me. He pulled me into a warm embrace, whispering sweet nothings, and I laughed softly, surprised that he was still awake. Harry chuckled, explaining that he had been lost in thought about Jennifer's upcoming birthday. Our conversation turned to the future, and when I playfully suggested that we consider giving Jennifer a baby brother or sister, I wasn't entirely joking. We had discussed expanding our family before, but had never reached a decision. This time, Harry's broad smile gave me hope that we might be ready to take that step. 2 months later, we celebrated Jennifer's 10th birthday with an extravagant backyard party. We invited all her friends, ensuring there was an abundance of ice cream and cake for everyone. As the party wound down, we prepared one last surprise for Jennifer, a big one. With excitement bubbling in our hearts, we shared the news that she would soon be getting a baby brother. The look of pure joy on her face was priceless as she realized her life was about to change in the most wonderful way. Story 2. Hold on, little brother. Commander Derek crouched beside his wounded comrade, pressing his unshaven cheek against his friend's forehead. Hang in there, little brother, he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. He pulled back, giving the soldier's shoulder a reassuring pat. But deep down, he knew this might be their last moment together. The other fighters had left him with a few grenades and full magazines, but they exchanged handshakes filled with unspoken understanding, their eyes betraying the grim reality. This might be the last time they would see each other in this life. As Derek watched the squad disappear with the wounded, he turned his attention to the task ahead. He started stacking stones around the BM, creating a makeshift barricade that would allow him to fire while still providing some cover. Once the barrier was complete, he unsheathed his trusted tanto knife and placed it beside him. After a moment's contemplation, he set down his pistol as well. Lighting a cigarette, he took a long drag, letting the smoke calm his nerves as he surveyed the landscape through his binoculars. There was no alternative route through the pass. The enemy would come, and Derek knew they had no choice but to cross right where he lay in wait. A wry smile spread across his face. Perhaps this was the end, but if it was, he would make it count. Half an hour later, he spotted movement. 3 new recruits strolled down the path, their relaxed demeanor suggesting they didn't grasp the dangers ahead. Derek's training kicked in. His reflexes were sharp. With a smooth pull of the trigger, he unleashed a short burst. 2 of the recruits dropped as if they had hit an invisible wall. The third, wide-eyed with shock, bolted back, yelling something unintelligible. In an instant, the air was thick with gunfire. Bullets whizzed overhead, ricocheting off the rocks around Derek, sending splinters of granite raining down. He fired back, carefully conserving his ammunition, but the enemy quickly adapted, spreading out and taking cover behind the boulders. Their return fire pinned him down. Bullets struck perilously close to his makeshift barricade. Out of the corner of his eye, Derek spotted a bearded recruit aiming a grenade launcher directly at him. Acting on instinct, he ripped the pin from his grenade and hurled it toward the enemy. The explosion shook the mountain pass, plunging the area into a temporary silence. But Derek knew the calm wouldn't last long. The bandits would regroup, and soon the chaos would resume. As he glanced at the darkening sky, he realized, children are my priority since I owned this house before we even met, so they'll be staying here for the foreseeable future. Let's try to keep this as amicable as possible, especially for the sake of our kids. Don't even think about trying to take them away. I have a signed court order stating that you must notify me immediately if you attempt to take them out of school for any reason. Once you get legal representation, I'll provide a copy of our prenup to your attorney. I wish I could say this is just business, but this has become very personal for me. With that, I turned away from a stunned Heather, who had obviously believed she could walk away with a hefty sum and a top-notch lawyer by her side. However, when her attorney reviewed the prenup, the depositions from witnesses at various events, and the recording of her behavior from last Sunday's party, he had a serious talk with her. Needless to say, she was not pleased. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly straightforward. Since everything was clearly outlined in the prenup, things moved swiftly. I wasn't sure if she harbored any resentment toward me, but given how ruthless my attorney was, she probably should have. Ultimately, Heather ended up in a 1-bedroom apartment, taking only her jewelry, clothes, and car, along with a sum of money that wouldn't last her long. I permitted her supervised visits with the kids at our home, always ensuring that I was present. Gradually, she found a part-time accounting job and reportedly began freelancing. For the following 3 months, I felt a sense of contentment. My children were with me, and Heather couldn't afford to take them away. She visited a couple of times a week, and on weekends, the kids would spend time with her at her apartment. Whenever she came to pick them up, I made it a point to be scarce, avoiding any contact with her. I had no inclination to date during that time. We were too busy growing our business and acquiring new clients. Then one day I found myself in a confrontation. "No, absolutely not. I refuse to tolerate this," I exclaimed to my colleagues. "Why on earth would I agree to such a ridiculous proposal? You know what she's like." "Well, she says she needs the money since your divorce, and if she organizes everything, we won't have to worry about planning anything for our gatherings. She'll handle all the invitations and food, and all we need to do is show up and enjoy ourselves for a change. It'll be beneficial for everyone," they argued. I protested, but I was overruled. Initially, I had decided against attending, but from a business standpoint, it wouldn't be wise to turn down an opportunity. So, I gritted my teeth and went. "Good evening, Steve," Heather greeted me, a smile plastered on her face. "Heather," I nodded, acknowledging her presence but feeling far from comfortable. "I've got everything under control, just relax and pretend I'm not even here," she said with an air of confidence. Yeah, right, I thought. As the evening progressed, I was mistaken in my assumption that I could avoid her. To my surprise, the event went smoothly. It might have even been the most successful party we'd ever hosted, or at least that's what our client claimed. We secured some new business, and Ken and Andy were convinced it was due to the party's success. "We should host these every other month and invite potential clients. We could even set up a meeting room," they suggested, trying to reassure me. Despite my reservations, I was overruled yet again. I didn't like where this was heading, but under Heather's direction, the gatherings continued to grow larger. She embraced the role of hostess, mingling with our guests, even forming close relationships with a few of our clients. If I didn't know any better, I'd suspect there was something more going on behind the scenes. My unease grew when my father started inviting women to serve drinks. They bore an uncanny resemblance to escort ladies, both in appearance and demeanor. When I noticed some of them disappearing upstairs with clients, I felt compelled to intervene. "Guys, do we have a public space here? Sure, we can attract new customers, but our longtime clients will not linger if they feel something questionable is happening. They need to consider their reputations," I expressed, feeling frustrated. "Steve, relax. We're experiencing more business than we can handle. Just go with the flow," Ken replied dismissively. "I'm not one of the girls. You guys can stay if you want, but I'm leaving. I want no part in this," I said, heading for the exit. As I made my way out, Heather approached me. "Leaving already? The party's just getting started," she remarked, her tone laced with sarcasm. "Did you ever truly love me, or was it all just an act?" I shot back, my patience wearing thin. "I did love you," she said, looking somewhat vulnerable. "But you became too dull for me. I felt like a wild horse wanting to roam free while you tried to confine me. Just so you know, I didn't cheat on you until after that night. I hoped you would fight for me, but you never did," she confessed, her words dripping with regret. "Be real. Why would I fight for someone who embarrassed me? It seems you're giving our clients more attention than you ever gave me in the last 6 months of our marriage. If I pay for a service, I expect it to be delivered," I retorted, leaving her speechless and my dignity intact. After that incident, I stopped attending company events. "Mr. Collins," I greeted my colleague, rising from my desk to offer him a seat. "I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow. I don't like delaying bad news. I rearranged my schedule to meet with you first thing this morning," he explained, his tone serious. "Please, have a seat. Can I offer you anything to drink or eat?" "No, thank you. I won't be staying long," he declined, crossing his legs as he prepared to deliver his message. "Steve, I respect you, but I regret to inform you that I'm withdrawing my business from your firm. My associates and I are not satisfied with the direction your company is taking, and we can't afford to remain associated if something goes wrong." Confusion washed over me. "Is there something we've done wrong? If so, please let us correct the mistake," I pleaded. "Steve, I've always admired you, and you've never led me astray. But your two partners are steering your company down an uncertain path. Can I ask you something personal?" he said, shifting in his seat. "Of course, go ahead," I replied, curious. "I noticed you haven't been at the last 2 parties. Is there a reason for that?" he asked, his expression sincere. Nightfall was fast approaching. Here in the mountains, darkness descended quickly, and soon he wouldn't be able to distinguish friend from foe. Meanwhile, the enemy was still out there, attempting to encircle him, poised for a final assault. As Derek braced himself for what he feared might be his last stand, he couldn't shake the thought of whether his men had made it to the helicopter in time. He desperately hoped they had. He understood that if they did, the only thing that mattered now was that he didn't die too soon. Otherwise, all of this, everything, would have been for nothing. "Is it personal, Steve? Is that why your ex-wife is introducing women of questionable character to your new clients?" The accusation came from a tense boardroom where I could feel the weight of my reputation hanging by a thread. One of the clients even added, "One of them even asked me to go upstairs with her." Panic surged through my mind as I desperately tried to formulate a response. What if I assured you that within 30 days our company would undergo a complete turnaround? What if I pledged that if it didn't happen, I'd start my own firm? It's just 30 days, and if I'm wrong, what do you have to lose? "Give me a month to prove it," I proposed, watching as he mulled over the offer. After a moment that felt like an eternity, he finally agreed. "Okay, 30 days. No more. 30 days from today, I'll come back to either congratulate you or pull my business." "Agreed," I replied, relief flooding through me. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret it." As soon as he left, I knew I had to act fast to resolve the situation. My partners, Andy and Ken, arrived late as usual, carefree and oblivious to the storm brewing. "Guys, we're facing a significant issue," I said, cutting straight to the chase. "Some of our clients are considering withdrawing their business. One of them was approached inappropriately by the hostesses at your last party, and he was there with his wife. I assured him we'd fix this, but we only have 30 days to do it. I need your help." They shrugged it off as if it were nothing more than a minor inconvenience. They were perfectly content with the parties as they were, and if a few of the old-timers had a problem, so what? "Steve, we have contracts with all of them," Ken reassured me. "They can't just walk away without facing a hefty cancellation penalty. They won't risk that. You're worrying too much." I cursed them silently, my determination hardening. I wouldn't surrender without a fight. Grabbing my phone, I arranged a lunch meeting instead of dinner to keep it discreet. "Thanks for meeting me, guys," I said as they arrived. "I really appreciate it." "Why all the secrecy, Steve?" Linda asked, her brow furrowed in concern. Or should I say we, have a serious problem," I disclosed, recounting my meeting with Mr. Collins and the conversation I had with their husbands yesterday. "If I need to, I'll fight this alone. I've put too much into this business to let it crumble because of my ex-wife and a few unprofessional women." "What women?" Andy asked, suddenly alert. "Have either of you attended any parties in the last 6 months?" I queried, gauging their reactions. "The women who serve drinks and food are actually, well, let's just say they're not the kind of girls you'd take home to meet your parents." I slid a tabloid article across the table to them. "Here, read this," I added, and Linda chimed in, "I think I heard Heather mention that they used to be models." "I'd argue they look more like former actresses from a certain genre," I remarked, trying to keep it light. "They invite potential clients upstairs to close the deal." Both women frowned. "Our husbands wouldn't have agreed to this," they insisted. "Are you considering going to the party on Saturday?" I asked, trying to gauge their intentions. "Not really. They've turned into more like college frat parties than business gatherings," Andy replied, glancing at Linda for confirmation. "Now here's a personal question. When you both signed your prenups, were they similar to mine and Heather's? After seeing what Heather agreed to, we told our husbands there was no way we were signing one, and we didn't," Linda said, smiling. I was taken aback. "You didn't sign anything?" "Just our marriage license," Linda replied, the smile still on her face. "Can we meet at my place on Sunday around 10:30? I asked, sensing an opportunity. "Why?" Linda inquired, suspicious. "I want to show you what really happens at those parties. I have a friend who will record everything, and we can watch it together."
"Steve, isn't that a bit sneaky?"
Linda said, growing uncomfortable. "Look, the question is, do you trust your husbands? I just want to put an end to what I suspect is happening. That's all. I'm sorry if I don't sound overly sympathetic or concerned about Andy or Ken. This is not just about me. It's also about our livelihoods." "Well, I'm going to do it regardless of your approval. I just wanted to inform you both beforehand. You can warn your husbands or let it go. It's up to you."
"Steve, you wouldn't really do this alone, would you?"
Linda asked, her voice tinged with worry. "I wouldn't prefer to, but if necessary, I will," I replied, my resolve solidifying. "Let's reserve judgment until Sunday. Maybe they'll have a change of heart after our conversation, and if not, well, so be it." We had lost our appetite for lunch, the weight of the situation hanging heavily over us. Since our company was covering the expenses, I organized everything for the party at the hotel. The staff had no issues allowing my associate in early on Saturday morning. I instructed him to capture both video and audio in the dining room and hospitality room. "John, when everyone leaves Saturday night, retrieve all the cameras and give me the CDs. I don't want any lingering evidence that could cause problems later." "Understood," he replied. At least now I could either confirm what I had heard or prove to my clients they were mistaken, though I doubted it. John delivered everything just after 2:00 a.m. the next morning. Cameras, CDs, and microphones all accounted for, and with a check for $700 in his pocket, he departed. I went to bed, contemplating whether to peek at one of the CDs, but ultimately decided against it. I needed a good night's sleep. After all, there was no telling what might happen next. The next morning, Andy and Linda came to my house carrying a bag of donuts and coffee from Starbucks, which made breakfast unnecessary. "Have you watched the CD yet?" Andy asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee and grabbing a donut. "Not yet, but I've already put it in the DVD player," I replied, feeling the tension in the air. "Well, let's see what it is," Linda muttered, finishing her donut in anticipation. At first, the content seemed relatively harmless. Maybe I was wrong, I thought to myself. However, my perception shifted dramatically when Heather casually glanced around the room before exiting. I quickly switched to another DVD just in time to see her enter a different room and lock the door behind her. Then Ken walked in, and it was evident that he hadn't come for drinks or snacks. "No, no, please, no," I begged silently, my heart racing as I watched his actions. Both Andy and I shared a look of disbelief as the situation unfolded. At that moment, I realized we had seen enough. Andy's anger was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel relieved that I wasn't in his shoes. We skipped through most of the events, initially assuming Ken was the only one behaving poorly until Andy entered one of the rooms with a woman, Linda's wife. In a fit of rage, I hurled a cup of coffee at the TV screen, watching it splatter.
Steve, I'm incredibly sorry,
Heather exclaimed, her voice laced with frustration. I want to punish him in the most cruel way possible. That evening, Heather shocked both women as she engaged in conversation with two other men, revealing her promiscuity. It was hard to believe we had once felt so sympathetic toward her that we had persuaded our husbands to hire her for these parties.
I can't believe this,
one of the women murmured, her disbelief evident.
We really fell for it.
We're sorry again, Steve, another woman chimed in, trying to smooth things over. Apologies seem to be in abundance lately. Don't worry, I replied, trying to keep my cool. You couldn't have known, and honestly, neither did I until now. If you don't want to keep digging into this mess, let's just turn off this garbage. With that, I pressed the stop button on the remote, watching as the screen went dark. He's finished, I added, my frustration boiling over. I don't even want to see my husband right now. I'm calling him! I'll demand that he packs his things and leaves, Linda screamed, her anger palpable. I let them vent for the few more minutes before stepping in. Ladies, I said firmly, catching their attention as they turned to me with a mix of rage and confusion. Like it or not, we still depend on them for our work.
For what?
Linda retorted, her eyes narrowed. We're more than capable. They are both highly qualified in their professions, I replied, trying to reason with them. And right now, if we want our company to survive, we're going to need their help. Reluctantly, both women sat down, their anger still simmering just below the surface. I have a proposal for you both that will allow you to take revenge on your husbands while keeping the company intact, I said, leaning in closer. Over the next 2 hours, I laid out my plan in detail. Although they weren't thrilled with every aspect of it, they agreed to most of my suggestions. I wasted no time and contacted our company attorney. Within 3 hours, our agreement was signed, sealed, and notarized. Please refrain from taking any drastic actions until the paperwork is officially filed with the court on Monday morning, I urged them. By Tuesday, we'll be in a much stronger position, and what you choose to do then is entirely up to you. Honestly, I was indifferent. My former best friends had betrayed me, especially Ken, and they would face consequences one way or another. Monday unfolded like any typical day, filled with a barrage of tasks. After our morning meeting, I retreated to my office, closed the door, and dialed my ex-wife, Heather. I need to meet with you tonight at the house, I said, keeping my tone steady. The kids are with my mom, so we'll have privacy.
Steve, should I dress a certain way?
She teased, a playful lilt in her voice. Nope, wear whatever you like, you rascal, I replied, feeling a familiar mix of irritation and attraction. I knew you couldn't resist me.
I'll be there at 7, darling,
she said, and I felt a flutter of anxiety. Perhaps I shouldn't have engaged in this flirtation, but I couldn't resist. I wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole, I thought to myself, but I felt obligated to inform her about the changes happening in our lives since she was the mother of my children, thankfully no longer my wife. I had the front door unlocked, and just before 7, she walked in, draped in a long coat. As Heather undid it, she stood there, completely nude. I thought this would save us the hassle of dealing with clothes, at least from my side, she remarked, letting her coat fall dramatically. I passed her a glass of wine, and we toasted to what was once a great marriage. As I downed my drink, I couldn't help but notice her puzzled expression.
Please take a seat because you'll want to hear what I'm about to say. Steve, let's table this conversation for later. Right now, we need to focus on reconnecting, she insisted, adjusting herself on the couch.
Did you give the same excuse to Ken and the other guys from last Saturday's party? I asked, switching on the DVD player and fast-forwarding to the scene where she and Ken were together. I cranked up the volume.
Please turn it off! Turn it off! She yelled over the noise, her face flushing with embarrassment. It was a mistake! He threatened to cut me off if I didn't comply. I felt trapped.
And what about the other guys? Were they mistakes too? I pressed, my tone sharp. She fell silent, unable to come up with an answer. The parties are done as of last Saturday. No more parties, no more casual encounters, no more Ken and Andy.
But they still owe me from Saturday, she protested.
I pulled out a stack of cash, my heart racing. I've calculated $300 per encounter. This should cover you and the others. I handed her the money, watching her face as the reality of the situation sank in. If I were a jerk, I'd hand this tape over to the authorities. But you're still the mother of our kids, and I won't subject them to seeing you in jail.
Steve, I'm sorry. I needed money to make ends meet, she pleaded.
It seems you'll need to find another means to support yourself rather than relying on your relationship with me, I replied, my voice steady. I won't fund your lifestyle with money from my company any longer. Tomorrow, Andy and Ken will face consequences, and it won't be pleasant. I advise you to leave town for a while. Maybe visit your mother out of state until things settle down. I won't prevent you from seeing the kids, but I won't hide the truth about your actions either. That's something you'll have to reconcile with your conscience. However, until you get your life in order, you can only see them at this house, and you can't take them out alone, especially not for overnight visits. Is that clear?
I never brought anyone around when I had the kids. Do you really think I'm that foolish? She shot back, but I could see her confidence wavering.
I simply stared at her. I regret that things have come to this. I truly believed we had a decent marriage, but evidently you desired more than I could offer. After discussing our plans for the future, she left within the hour, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. She even offered to help relieve my stress if needed, though I knew I wouldn't take her up on that offer. Linda, for some reason, decided to give things a try with Andy, though I certainly wouldn't envy his position. Each of the women received 50% of their husband's stock in our company, which meant that Linda and I now held a controlling interest. Andy and Ken were informed they could keep their jobs, but would only be compensated based on their contributions moving forward. They weren't pleased with this arrangement, but obligations like child support and potential divorces kept them working. We implemented necessary changes to restore the company's reputation, and despite losing a few accounts, we maintained our loyal client base. Now, the only attendees at our monthly meetings were Linda and myself. We were considering expanding next year by hiring a few new graphic designers. Ultimately, that decision rested solely with us. Every other week, I meet with Heather to discuss the kids, and though our past is fraught with tension, I find myself reflecting on how everything has changed and what the future holds. I've completely lost touch with Heather's life, and frankly, I'm no longer interested in what she's doing. In the meantime, my personality profile has garnered a lot of attention, leading me to date several intriguing individuals. One person who has really captured my interest is a young woman named Kiko from Japan. She's a single mother who's planning a trip to the United States next month. We've had a few video chats, and she comes across as very pleasant and engaging. However, during our conversations, Kiko expressed some concerns about the negative stereotypes surrounding Americans, which struck me as quite insightful. She even asked directly about the reasons behind my split with Heather. When I explained the situation, she smiled and seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of meeting me in person. Could Kiko be the one? Only time will tell. But one thing I know for sure is that I enjoy being in love, and I have every intention of marrying again someday. I just hope she's open to the idea of signing a prenup. Unlike my previous experience with Heather, I'm not willing to take any chances this time around. Linda, too, has made it clear that she's looking out for her own interests. After everything that has happened, it's crucial to approach any new relationship with a sense of caution and clear boundaries.